Hi everybody, welcome back to, again, it's to Leonie's Kitchen, and always a nice spot for me anyway during the week, a bright spot, because I get lots of inspiration from watching Leonie. And I have to say, over the last few weeks since I've been following and watching Leonie do her recipes, which are always delicious and actually quite straightforward, I've taken a lot more risks with my own food and cooking, and I even made on Saturday, what was it, a green Thai curry. I mean, I would never have attempted that before, so it was a sort of a healthy one, but I used coconut oil, I used coconut milk, I mean all sorts of things I didn't even know existed before Leonie started showing us them. So I hope it's inspiring you as well. Today we've got a wonderful, let me look at it, it's a spinach, courgette and broccoli.
Ricotta lasagna.
Ricotta lasagna, thank you, Leonie. And something that I know is going to be a favourite with me, and I know I'm definitely going to make, and that is chocolate cookies. So over to you, Leonie. Show us these two delicious dishes.
Okay, well, I will, of course, first of all, a warm welcome to the Eatwright kitchen, where we are having a little bit of comfort food today, and of course healthy. Who could have thought that chocolate biscuits can be healthy? But they absolutely can. First of all, we are using 1 egg. I use a large organic egg because I know the chickens have had a happy and healthy life, and it's not much more expensive than normal eggs. Then I'm going to use some gluten-free oats, and they are going to be the flour that I'm using. I know, Tricia, that you stopped eating bread and gluten, and as a result you felt a lot better. So I think this recipe you will really like. This is raw cacao, which I believe you now also have been stocking up on, and so have plenty of it. I'm using something that a lot of people might have seen in the supermarket but not really used a lot, which is almond butter. I buy the organic almond butter because I know that the trees have been looked after properly. I'm using a little bit of Himalayan salt and then almond milk. I use the unsweetened almond milk, and again organic. And then finally my trusted sweetener, which is the stevia. So what I will do, if you buy oats, of course, they come in this consistency, and I want to make them into flour. So I'm going to show you how I'm doing that with my trusted little coffee grinder. So I'm going to turn you down and see, you can see what everything is here, I believe. Yeah, let me just see the coffee grinder. So here's my coffee grinder, which I got from a supermarket shop for about £10. So it doesn't cost a lot of money. And I'm going to put the oats in here. Now, to be fair, I've already ground a few oats, which are ready, but I just want to show you how I do it without throwing all the gluten all over the place, which is very difficult if you have a square bowl, as you can see. But I managed, sort of. So I'm just putting the lid on, very simple, and then I'm just grinding it like that. Just for about 30 seconds or so. Take the lid off, and then you have flour. Look at that. And it's got no gluten. As I said, Tricia, I know you've cut out gluten. For how long have you not had gluten? For how many years?
About 2 or 3.
Okay, and did you feel a lot better because of it?
It's been my skin. I did it because I had these hard, lumpy, painful spots on my face, and I knew that sugar was probably affecting me quite badly. And then I also experimented with cutting out bread, and the difference was just unbelievable. And I find now if I just eat one portion of bread, I'll get spots within about 3 or 4 days. So it's a big no-no for me, really.
Now, as you experienced, Tricia, you have taken the gluten out and you felt so much better. And your symptoms were breaking out of the skin, but there can be other symptoms. It could be causing digestive issues, bloating as well. You can have migraines and headaches, which could be caused by gluten. Feeling very tired is often an issue. And gluten is actually the protein within flour. So it binds everything together. It's a sort of binding agent. And also it's used, of course, to make bread rise. But nowadays we've added more and more gluten to the products that we eat, especially the processed foods. So a lot more people have problems with tolerating the gluten because we're just eating too much of it. And yeah, it's not really necessary. So that's why I'm using the oat flour today. So this biscuit, you can 100% be sure, no sugar, of course, and gluten-free. Now, what I'm going to do is going to start by adding the dry ingredients together. So I've just made my flour, put that in a bowl. Then I'm adding raw cacao powder. I know that you have got a lot of that in your cupboard at the moment because you're very fond of it. You make it into a hot chocolate?
I haven't done, no, I bought myself a big bag of it because it was featuring in quite a lot of, well, your recipes, but other things that I was looking at. And I just thought, okay, you know, I'll do that. And I have used it now for your chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
And also for your chocolate mousse.
Yeah. Now there might be, I know that you don't have a coffee machine, but you can grind it in any food processor. If you haven't got that either, you could buy gluten-free buckwheat flour. Buckwheat is the same as oats and very similar. I'm just adding a little bit of salt, of course, Himalayan salt. Buckwheat is very similar to oats and it's got the same consistency. You can use almond flour if you have that and it's more readily available. That's just an alternative. So next I'm going to put in the almond milk. By the way, just to mention to the viewers that I'm in my recipe book, this recipe is double the amount. So I'm making half of it today. Otherwise normally the consistency makes about 24 biscuits. But I would be eating 24 days of chocolate biscuit, and I think then it's starting to get a little bit boring. So we mix this up. You don't need to whisk the egg because you will break the egg up while you do this. And then the almond butter. You can use hazelnut butter as well, if that's what you like. I know in France, they do a lot of hazelnut oil, don't they? Hazelnut oil and hazelnut butter. Is that correct, Tricia, or not?
I'm not familiar with that. Can you tell us what form does that almond butter? Does it come in a jar?
It comes in a jar. Sometimes you can buy runny almond butter, so it's a bit thinner, but it tends to be normally quite a bit thicker. Let me just put in the stevia because we haven't done that. This asks for about half a teaspoon, and I'll tell you about the butter in a minute. I looked it up because one of your viewers, Anna, who has got my recipe book, said she was trying to make the almond cookies, but couldn't find the runny almond butter. So what you could do to make it runny is to add a little bit of olive oil, like 1 tablespoon of olive oil, some coconut oil, or heat the jar up in water, and then it will become more liquid. So this is your dough. So it's very sticky. Looks a bit like flour. And what I'm next going to do is get a tray with baking powder on it. Baking paper, not powder, sorry. My mistake. Move this out of the way. And basically, I'm just going to scoop about 12 hoops of this sort of sticky matter on the tray. It looks, it's like Play-Doh. So it's quite a lot on my spoon. Let me get that off for you. And then you just do it like that. And you can make the cookies as large or as small as you want. This one is quite sticky, but if you find the mixture is too sticky, just add some. Now this is going to be more like a rock, I think, but it's meant to be like that. It has to be a little bit rustic. We're not going to be too precise. It doesn't need to be too round. Just a dollop of chocolate like this. So when you make 12 of them, to be fair, I used my hands when I did it because I find it much easier. But yeah, you can do it with a spoon. So you do this 12 times. It's like a rocky biscuit, isn't it? And you put them then in the oven for about 20 minutes. They are sticky, so if you want to use your hands, my hands are washed, but you can make them up like this. And actually, I quite like the feel of doing that. And that's, yeah, you can, whatever you feel happy with, really. This is quite a large one, but it should make about 12 of these size of biscuits. And
that
then
would
it goes.
be a brilliant thing to do with children, because they'd love to get their hands in that and squish it around.
Yeah, it's a sort of Play-Doh that you're making, you know.
Yeah.
So, right. So I won't make all of them now, but I would have made 12 of these. Just put this aside, and when you put it in the oven for 20 minutes and it comes out, it looks like this.
Wow, they look gorgeous.
They look very yummy and they're very scrumptious. No need to feel guilty when you're eating those because there's no sugar in it. It's good fats in the almond, of course, and gluten-free. So absolutely delicious.
Can I ask you, could you substitute the, I've got some peanut butter,
yeah.
quite a lot of it, organic peanut butter, in fact. Could you substitute the some peanut butter for the almond butter or not?
Now, Tricia, you asked me, can you use peanut butter? You absolutely can use peanut butter. It's not a problem. I'm not a great fan of a lot of peanut butter because peanuts are not nuts. They are legumes. They have starch in them and they have a lot of pesticides on them as well if they grow. But if you eat it occasionally, absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you want to use cashew butter, that's another butter that's readily available. You can use that as well. But cashews have a higher glycemic index, so they will raise your blood sugar level a little bit more. That's why I favor almond butter, hazelnut butter. There is something called pumpkin butter as well, if you like that. It's not my cup of tea. I don't particularly like it, hence I favor the almonds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Now time for our spinach, courgette and ricotta lasagna. I'm cutting out the lasagna sheets. Normally you would buy them in the supermarket, but they are full of gluten and we're trying to avoid gluten. And instead of that, I'm going to use 2 courgettes, which I'm going to slice up and grill. And I'll show you how I do that. The other ingredients I have is spinach, of course. I've got a large bag of spinach, which I took out and washed, so that's ready to go into the mix. I'm using some herbs. The herbs that I'm using are oregano, but if you don't have oregano, you can also use Italian herbs. We have nutmeg, garlic, and I'm using 2 cloves of garlic, and it smells delicious in here. Of course, garlic is very good for your heart, for your blood pressure, and also for your cholesterol. And I'm using an Italian cheese called ricotta. Have you ever eaten ricotta cheese, Tricia?
I must have done, yes. So
yeah.
It's the soft, creamy cheese.
Yeah, it's very versatile, and it comes, of course, from Italy. It's low in salt and very low in fat, and it's the whey of the cheese, of the milk once the cheese is made. So it's very healthy for you and full of calcium as well. And then I'm using salt and pepper and some Parmesan cheese, which I will grate as well. So the first thing we're going to do is to cut up the courgettes, and I don't want you to hang on for hours. So I'm just going to show you how I do that and how I grill them as well. So there we go. Right, so we're taking off the end bits of the courgette. The first thing I need to do is to turn my hob on. And on a quite a high heat, because I've got a grill pan here. I'll show you in a minute, but I want it to heat up. I don't need to oil anything. That's absolutely fine. So you make very thin slices. I would say about 1/4 centimeter, as thin as you can. But if they are a little bit too thick, it doesn't really matter because you just have to cook them for a little bit longer. Always vary with a very sharp knife. So the last one I just cut it like that. Make sure that you don't damage your fingers. So you're cutting up the whole courgette in slices. The next thing I'm going to do is to cut up the garlic. I've already cut up one garlic, so this is the second one. In my recipe, it says crushed garlic, which you can absolutely do. It's not a problem at all. However, I find if you cut garlic, it keeps in the nutrients and all the goodness that the garlic has to offer in there, much more than if you crush it, because then it evaporates quicker. So just in little bits. I had a lovely lady that I spoke to through, she's also one of your super troopers, Tricia, and she gave me some really good hints and tips about how to cook. She was a professional chef, so
wow.
I listened to her advice, which is fantastic, which is really nice, because I'm not a professionally trained cook. I've just taught myself. I had some cooking classes when I lived in Holland, and we learned Indonesian cooking. So yeah, well, more about that later. Okay, so that's the garlic done. I just put that in there. Make sure you use it all. It's a very garlicky dish, so it's very tasty. Right, now I've heated up the grill pan. What I'm doing next is turning this up really high. As I said, you don't need to put any oil on it. And you just place the slices like that. You can do this under a grill. If you have a grill at home, you probably have, but this is actually the most time-consuming thing for this dish. And I'll do that later. So I'll just leave it there for a minute so you can see what it will be like. Next, I'm going to turn on the spinach. I'm using a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Just a dash. Put that in the pan like that. I'm heating up the pan on a medium to low heat and putting in the spinach. Quite a lot, and you want the spinach just to wilt. I prefer to buy fresh spinach. Now, spinach, of course, is also used in salads, which is very good, but actually spinach has got something in it which is called oxalic acid, which actually blocks the absorption of iron and calcium, because spinach has got a lot of iron and calcium in it. So to get the maximum of the nutrients and benefits, nutritional benefits, it's better actually to cook it, because then the calcium and iron stays in it. So while this is sort of slightly heating up, I'll just wait a little and have a look at my, yes, that's starting to brown a little, as you can see. And that's starting to boil as well. So just you have to make sure that you turn this around. Another thing is with spinach, if you can cook it, it's always good to put some lemon in it. I don't do that in this dish because it doesn't go together. But again, that's very healthy for you. Are you a spinach fan, Tricia?
I don't eat very much spinach, I have to say. You know, I think I'm put off by the fact that you have to buy a mountain and you get, you know, a spoonful at the end of it. So
I know what you mean. You don't get value for money, don't you?
Possibly that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well, it is very good for you. Spinach also is very good to reduce your blood sugar level. So that's very good for your bones. And especially as we know, ladies, when we get older, we need to look after our bones. It's good for our skin, for our hair. So yeah, it is quite a good product. You can buy it frozen as well, Tricia, if you like. Have you ever bought frozen spinach?
In fact, I've got some frozen spinach in my freezer now. So, how would I use frozen spinach in this dish?
Absolutely, you can. You would use the same amount of frozen spinach. So the recipe calls for 235 grams. I would use exactly the same amount in frozen. So That's definitely, you can use that for this. Now it's nearly wilted. I don't want it to wilt too much. So I'm now going to add the garlic. And the oregano. And the nutmeg. I made last week, because I make new recipes all the time, and I made something with mushrooms and mushroom sauce and nutmeg, and it was absolutely delicious, and the taste of the mushrooms came out so much more with the combination with nutmeg. I'm going to add some salt and some pepper. And of course, now we have to sort of look at our courgettes. You see that they're starting to brown up. Just to give you an idea how to do that. Normally I put it on another hop place where it's bigger, but then I can't see it on the camera. A little bit of salt. Give this a bit of stir. And for me, this is now ready. I don't want to fry the garlic too much, because again, you don't want it to burn. I'm now ready to take off the sheets, the courgette sheet. I'm just going to put them aside and turn this off, sort of get the idea how it would work. So I'm putting them on another one. And I've prepared some here that I'm going to use for this dish. So that you can see, that's the sort of done bit. I did that last night, so you can easily do that. Now comes the fun bit, which is actually building everything together. And I've got a bowl for that. We'll start with the ricotta. I roughly, when I have a pot of ricotta, I divide it in sort of 3 bits, and I put the ricotta on the bottom first. But before I do that, I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to make sure that the lasagna won't stick to the sides. I find I use a lot of olive oil in the dishes that I cook. It's a really good omega-3 oil, so you can't go wrong with it. Do you use olive oil a lot?
I do, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, I put it on salads as well. So I roughly do about 1/3. I hear some noise, some cooking noise, but it's all turned off. So put that with the spoon. Then I've made my lovely spinach. I'll put a layer of that on the top. So mix all that up. You see, so instead of the sheets, you're using the spinach, which is a really good vegetable for you, and lots of courgette on top, and you layer it like this. See? Courgette is so good for you as well. It's lots of potassium in it, so very healthy for you. You can be a bit creative with it. So next on goes the next layer. You try to spread it out again. You can do it with your fingers if you like. We don't need to be too precise because it's well, try to make it look nice, of course. And then the final spinach. Take that all out. Such a lovely smell again. Always a shame you can't. Right, so that's fry that over there. Then again another layer. See, some of them are quite thin, so they don't take a lot of time. When you layer up courgettes, that might be a good tip if the ladies are trying it, is to put some tissue in between, because that sort of absorbs all the liquids. As I said, courgette is full of water, so it's very good for people that like diets. And then finally I put this on. Let's define a bit of ricotta and divide that over it as well. Was one lady that was so sweet. She sent me a message and she said, Leonie, I bought some ricotta, but I can't remember what recipe it was for. And that was such a coincidence. So sweet, yeah. Okay, so that's that done. And then finally, I'm going to put some of the grated Parmesan cheese on. And this will then go in the oven. So you see, instead of all the pasta that's in there, you sort of have omitted the pasta. You could use a red pepper as well. Pepper from a tin or from a jar, red pepper, instead of lasagna sheets. That's a recipe which I had in my old book. So I'll put some more grated Parmesan on the top. And there we have it, it's ready. So it's now ready to go into the oven.
Wow.
So that's it. So let me show you what the end product is. So this put is when you've got a bit more time and are more precise in dividing all the ricotta, it will look like this.
Lovely.
And yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? It's for 2 people. Now, we will have this for dinner tonight, and my husband will have it with pasta, and I will probably have it with a salad. That's how I like it. So, yeah, it's lots of protein, carbohydrate, good fats, low in salt, except for the healthy salt. So this recipe, ricotta, spinach, and courgette lasagna.
Brilliant. Well, that looks looks really delicious, and I love the idea of layering up the vegetables like that with the cheese. Yeah. I can imagine it's absolutely delicious.
Yeah, it is. It is. I can guarantee you. Well, I like it, of course, because otherwise I would not have put it in my recipe book.
That's brilliant, Leonie. Thank you so much for doing that. And
that's a pleasure.
We were discussing next week, and I think we thought we'd do cheese straws and Indonesian stir fry.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Lovely.
I love cheese straws, and we go sometimes to the shop, but the smell of cheese is just so lovely. You always want to have a bite of it. I just want one bite, but I never do because I know it's got gluten in it. So this will be gluten-free as well and easy to make. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. We really look forward to that. And thank you again for today. And, get cooking the Leonie way, everybody, because it's definitely healthy and good for you, and avoiding all the pitfalls of those things that are not good for our guts and are not particularly good for our hips if we have a tendency to put on a bit of weight around that area, which I definitely do. So thanks a lot again, Leonie, and look forward to seeing you next week.
It's a real pleasure, Tricia, and I look forward to it as well. Take care.